All right, welcome to this week's episode of Seeds of Music, the web's #1 resource for independent artists. I'm your host, Kyle Williams, and this is our weekly web show where I bring on music industry professionals and successful independent artists to talk about the ways to build a bigger, stronger fan base and earn more income from music. So I'm going to make the quick announcement that I always make. We do have the iTunes podcast. It's audio-only version of the show. You can head over to iTunes and punch in Seeds of Music, Rise Above the Noise, hit the subscribe button, and you'll get all the latest episodes downloaded directly to your mobile device or your computer. Plus, if you want to help out this show grow, and it's really easy to do, leave a rating and review within the iTunes interface. If you do that, it'll help this show's ranking go up in the iTunes database, giving the show more exposure, helping more artists because more artists will find out about it and get this awesome information, and it will help me to get bigger and better interviews. And to say thank you, I'll give you a shout out in the next episode saying, hey, thanks for leaving the rating and review, so-and-so, just to say thanks. So please take the time to do that if you want to support this show. Now, this week's guest is an independent artist, an LA-based musician born in Santiago, Chile, who's making a full-time living with music for several years from many income sources, all music related. Her name is Yael Meyer. And what's incredible is that throughout her 10 years in the music industry of making music, creating and performing it, she has built her own team from scratch that is essentially formed into an independent record label called KLI Records. And what's even more incredible is she's done this and has raised a family of 4. So it's her husband who's her manager, and she has 2 children that she takes care of. And that's what really, really blows my mind. So the topic of this interview is the warrior spirit of the modern musician. What is the force that propels artists forward in their career? Where exactly does it come from, and how can you use it to your advantage? We'll also talk about her biggest challenge in creating her latest studio album, Warrior Heart, which is actually her 3rd studio album. We'll also talk about her top music income sources, why she started her own label, and why she chooses the email list over social media when it comes to connecting with fans. I'm really excited for this, guys, so let's jump right in. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Seeds of Music. We have Yael Meyer on the show. Thank you so much for joining us from actually down the road at Los Angeles. I'm here in Long Beach, so hopefully our internet connection will be stronger considering the proximity there.
I hope so.
But we've been good so far, so I think we need to just run with it before the Skype gods rain their fire down on us, which they have before in the past. Yeah. So
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. I think I'm really excited to interview you, not only because you're a musician, but you've done even more than that, like forming your own independent label, and you do a lot of work besides just, trying to sell CDs at your shows. You had a lot of different ways that you're making income with music. But first, I want to talk about the album that you've just released, Warrior Heart, came out September 16th. So it's been out a little bit now. I'm curious, where were you when you first thought of the name for that album? Or did it come with the song, the title track, Warrior Heart, first?
I wrote that song first. I usually don't work on album titles until the very end. Like, that's the absolute last thing that I will do. Even after the album is... I sit down and I listen to the record in every possible order that it could exist. And I drive myself insane. But I really want to make records that you can hear from beginning to end. Yeah. So I really... I like listening
You're old school.
From beginning. Yeah, I like doing that. So yes. I want to do that for the people who listen to my music. I want to do what artists that inspire me do for me, Yeah. So for me, the name of the record is the last piece of the puzzle. Like for me, making an album is almost like birthing a child.
Yeah.
And so I want to see who that child is before I give them a name, and until the process of the record is completely finished, I don't feel that I can. So so the record was done, and I had various options, and I usually go with album titles. Like I feel like there's gonna be one song that is gonna represent like the identity or the energy or the power of what I want to convey, and so I go with that.
So let's talk about the title track, because obviously that came before just naming the album Warrior Heart. But for the title track that you have available on your website, I see you have the video posted up there on YouTube, which is a very awesome video, by the way. I'd be interested to know how you did all that different light animation. It was really, really cool stuff.
Thank you.
The song is great as well. And so let's start with that. I mean, how did the concept of what is Warrior Heart? What does it mean to you?
I think that this is a very personal song in this particular case. Well, all the songs are personal to me, but I also try to make them, global in a sense that everybody can connect to them. But I do feel like I'm always fighting very hard for something. And I feel like in general, that's just who I am. I'm very passionate about everything about a lot of things.
Yeah.
I'm not like a mild person, I'm either super into something or whatever. I don't really care. But if something interests me or something catches my attention for any reason, then I'm all about it. And I think that I have a warrior heart, and I think that sometimes that can be very exhausting and frustrating because I don't want to be, so attached and so defending so many things, and fighting hard for everything because it's an exhausting way to live. But at the same time, I can't help but be who I am.
Yeah.
So the song is a little bit about that. But I also think that everybody has some aspect of that, some internal force that pushes us to go after things that are difficult or that are,
when we
whatever
listen
it is.
To it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that we all have it and we don't always listen to it. And I think that part of the job of being alive is getting comfortable with that voice and not fighting it off, which makes it even more hard, Yeah. I mean, fighting it off is half of the battle, Yeah,
it's coming in from within you, not from outside. So how do you can't fully suppress that your real desires, like what you're truly meant to do. So being like this warrior heart, do you feel like you're constantly on the defense or offense? I mean, what's the number one thing that you feel like you're fighting with your art and your expression?
I don't think that is like a defense or an offense. Like I don't see it in an aggressive way. I see it more of like a energy that pushes you and propels you forward, that forces you to work hard for things,
to shake out of apathy, to like get up off the couch, to stop watching TV,
for example, or to stand up for things that you really believe in. Like sometimes you're in a situation where maybe you would rather not enter that conversation or enter that confrontation. But there's just something inside of you that won't allow you not to because you're way too passionate about it. It just strikes a chord within you that resonates too strongly for you to hold back what you really feel and what you really believe about something. So I don't see it as an aggressive confrontational thing. I see it more as this force that just pushes you and propels you towards something else. And in my life and in my art, I think that it goes a little bit of what we were talking about before we started the interview, which I'm sure we're going to touch more on. But, this is a ruthless industry. And I war with myself very often of like, why do I do this? Why do I do this to myself?
Why do I deal with these people?
Exactly. Why do I deal with me? Like, why did I choose to do this with my life? And why do I continue to do so every single day? And I feel that as artists, it's not even so much of a choice. I think that's just, it's part of your DNA and you have to do it for your own mental sanity, and the communicating part, which is what is so hard because we want other people to receive what we want to share. It's very difficult, but whether people are going to hear it or not, there's going to be a song on my head when I go to sleep every night, no matter what, there's going to be a desire in me to create, to bring people together, to make something, whether it's a production, a film, whether it's a music, whether it's a gathering, whether it's a festival or a concert, or it doesn't matter. There's just something inside of me that will not let me stop. So I think that I'm at war with that aspect of me every day for the past 10 years since I've been doing this, sometimes more than others. But I just think it's maybe it's part of being an artist.
Do you feel
unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's what defines us. But do you feel like the war within is the most important war to win?
I think so, and I think that, like when I start to lose, because you put so much of everything into everything that you do, that and it takes so much work and patience and perseverance, that you start to lose fuel and you have to recharge.
Yeah.
So sometimes I will, like what we're doing now, like I will listen to an interview with somebody else that I admire and try to be inspired by their journey.
Yeah.
But I also listen to a lot of interviews with actors, because I feel that the only other harder profession in the creative sense is the acting. I mean, you're getting rejected every single day for years. And then
comedians. Yeah. I feel like comedians have it the hardest.
And people go on auditions for years and years and years without getting anything. And how do they keep doing it and not give up, know? And they don't. And and so like I do that. I'll sit down and I'll listen to somebody else's struggle and journey, and be inspired by their perseverance and their talent and their ability to pull through, and see where they're at, and also understand that life is a roller coaster of ups and downs. Like you can be at the top of your game for years, and then in 15 seconds, nobody remembers who you are, and you have to start all over again. And so many people in the industry have had to do that multiple times. And so I think it's important to remember that just because you're at the bottom, it doesn't mean you're never going to be at the top. And just because you're at the top, it doesn't mean that you're going to stay there forever.
Yeah.
This is a constant journey and a constant battle, and a constant experience that we have chosen as part of our life,
Yeah. So I feel like you can never let your guard down completely. You can never completely slack up. You have to stay creative. You have to stay just at least, whether that means creating music or not. Like some musicians at certain points, they decide they don't want to make any music anymore. They want to start painting, or they want to pursue something else. But I think the point is to always be pushing yourself forward with that, like you said, the warrior heart, which is like this positive energy that's not you shoving back at stuff that you feel is attacking you, but it's a force that's forcing you to move forward. Exactly.
I think that it's just being present and accepting that this is part of the journey, and not always expecting for things to be we're always waiting for the next step, even when we reach a goal. Like for me, even when I reach a goal, I'm always thinking of what is the next goal that I want to achieve. Like I don't even have time to bask or to enjoy like the fruit of whatever success it is that I'm having, because I've been working for it for so long and so hard that when I finally arrive there, it's like I don't even care anymore. I'm thinking of the next step, And I think that's a very common thing to do, but I also think that that we need to be okay with the ebbs and flows of life and of the industry, and even in the creative sense. Like I'm not always writing, when I write, and then there's 8 months that I don't write, and I don't get scared, I don't get worried, because I've been doing this for 10 years. And I know that that's just how it is. Like sometimes I'm creative and sometimes I'm not,
What was your biggest challenge when creating this album?
I struggle at every stage of the process, because I know that a lot of people go through the same thing, but I get very intensely emotional when I'm working on a record, and I think that maybe the hardest part for me is listening to the mixes, because when we're in the studio, I'm very in the moment, and I'm very committed to the moment, and I don't overthink things. I work with a producer who doesn't allow me to overthink things, and that's a great thing, because otherwise I could be, listening to the guitar part for a week, and then, finding the right sound, and then not like it and have to trash everything. So we move very, very quickly, and that is awesome, because it allows me to be creative and to stay in the moment and not to dwell on details that then destroy everything. But the way that things sound in the studio is very different than when you've detached yourself from the product or from what you're making, from the music, and then you get a mix, and the plugins are different, you're not in the same room, the speakers are different, you're
Yeah.
not in the same mood,
Yeah.
and just the fact that the plugins are different already makes everything sound different. So for me, adjusting to the process between creating and being in that vacuum that is the studio, where you're just being creative and having the best time of your life,
Yeah.
to detaching from the process and accepting that it's coming to a close,
Yeah.
and getting acquainted with what it actually sounds like in
Yeah.
reality when you're done with that creative
Yeah.
process.
It seems like that's like the classic issue of being able to take an objective view of something that's very
Yeah,
like that you're very attached to. And I
that's
mean,
very hard.
I think I brought this up before, but I love bringing up this quote because it's so often. But like, I mean, if you take a musician like Miles Davis, I think he's a great example of a musician who never got attached to any one way of doing things. Like, if you just listen to Kind of Blue and then you listen to Bitches Brew, it's just so different, you know. And I think at one point someone asked Miles. They said, "Well, Miles, how come you don't play ballads anymore?" And he was like, and this is a horrible Miles Davis impression. He was like, "'Cause I love playing ballads." That's my horrible. I don't know. He had a deep voice. That's my horrible impression. But yeah, he was like, because he loved doing it. Like, that's why he didn't play the ballads anymore, because he was so concerned
Right.
with his
That
music
they were
evolving.
right.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think he was able to take a step back and look at his music objectively, whether after he was done playing it and listening to it recorded and played back. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that happens, and I'm very, very in the mix back, like,
Hmm.
8 times, because I went one level, like a little bit down, and like my producer will be like, "Oh my God, I will kill you, and this
Yeah.
has to stop. You
Yeah.
need to let it go." And part I think that he's right, and in part I think that I'm right. I think that it's also important to fight for your vision, and we
Yeah.
always get to that point where it's like he doesn't really give me that. He doesn't make a problem. He'll make all the changes that I want, but like at mix 7, he'll start making fun of me. He's not gonna not do it or give me a hard time. He's
Yeah.
just gonna make fun of me. But like a year later, he'll call me and he'll be like, "You remember how like you made me do like 8 different mixes of that song? Well, like in the moment I wanted to kill you, but now that I listen to it, I think that you were right,
Yeah.
So I think that it's a difficult process,
Hmm.
but you have to go through it. And I think it's my least favorite part of the process, because you
It's
can
not
make it.
immediate as just performing.
No, I think it's because you can make or break what you're doing in so many different parts of the process.
Yeah.
If you don't write a good song, then it's just not going to be the great ending. If in the production phase you can make bad choices,
Yeah.
but then when you're in the mix phase, like that's the end, and you really don't want to mess it up at the end.
Yeah. Because you think, oh, I got through stage 1 great, stage 2
Exactly.
great, and now stage 3, like you're like kind of on eggshells because you have something that has so much potential. And yeah, it's a really tough process, which is why it's so hard to succeed in music. However, I think how I define success, you are a successful musician to me, because you've
Oh,
been doing
thank
this
you.
for 10 years. How many
Yeah.
years of that have you been full time? Like, this is all you do?
Well, the first 4 years I was in school.
Hmm.
So, I
At
was going to
Berkeley,
music
right?
school at Berkeley. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was doing it there too, but it wasn't, how I was making a living. And I think that going to music school was great, but it was also frustrating because I didn't really want to be in school. I wanted to be working,
Yeah.
I wanted to be working on my career, and I
Yeah.
felt that I had to postpone that for 4 years so that I could get
Yeah.
school over with.
Yeah.
Um, and then I felt like I started late because I started working on my career at 24, and by 24 I wanted to be successful already. I didn't want to start
Yeah.
working at
Yeah.
24.
We have that idea that, oh, if you're not successful by your early 20s,
Exactly.
then you're, yeah.
Especially it was like the days of Britney Spears and NSYNC. It's
Yeah.
like they were like 16 when they were like making it big.
Yeah.
It's like you're
Yeah.
24. It's like the train left you.
I know, it's like this sad thing that gets drilled into our head, but at least I like to think of Sting, because I think Sting was much
Yeah.
older. There you go. I just think of his music.
No, and Katie Turnstile was like, I think 34, 31 when she broke, and Katy Perry was 28. I mean, like, there's always people, but it's not
Ray
the, you know,
LaMontagne?
the most common thing is that people don't go to school.
Yeah.
They start at 17, 18 as soon as they finish high school, and they hustle, you know, and they make it happen.
Yeah.
So that's what I was doing. And then when I finished school, I was still doing this, but I've always been doing this full time, but that doesn't mean that I have been making a living full time doing that. I've been working full time in the music industry for 10 years. So I would release records, I would produce my own records, I would tour, I would tour different parts of the world, and then I would babysit, you know, on the side, and I would love the kids that I babysat, but I'd be like, oh my god, I didn't go to 4 years of school to clean a tiny tushy that is not my own, you know. And then and so that frustration also propelled me to feel like I have to make this work. But it was many years before I started to make a living. And it was many years before I was able to say, this is all I'm going to do, you know, and it has to work. And part of that was also figuring out how I could make a living doing that full time. Because I didn't want to be on the road 9 months of the year touring with some band doing backup vocals or and you know, there's so many different sources of revenue in the music industry, and sometimes you can hit it on the nail on the head with like one particular thing, and you're making enough. You can just do that. But more often than not, you need a lot of different things working for you and making a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here and a little bit there, so that they add up to something that is substantial enough that you can make it a sustainable career. So it took me a while to get there.
Okay. And so when exactly did you switch to being a full-time musician?
I think in the past 5 years.
Okay.
The past 5 years.
And what are your top, like, you're talking about multiple income, which I agree, all musicians should think about multiple income sources, but what are your top income sources with music?
It's just very varied, you know, like there's a mix of live performance and publishing and sync fees. And I would say those are the main three. And it varies on the market, because I make more money playing live shows in Chile than I do in the United States, but I make more money with publishing and sync in the United States and in the rest of the world than I do in Chile, because there are different parts of the market that have been developed in the different territories. Like the sync market is not as developed in Chile, but the sync market is very developed in the United States.
Why do you think you make more at your live shows in Chile?
Because there's brands and venues that are willing to pay people to play, and in the United States, it works in the reverse.
Exactly. Yeah, that's like that's a unique problem that we're having. What's your take on why it's like that in the U.S. with those venues?
I don't know, but I think it's because simply they can. I think that Chile so you have a good band or a good artist, and you attribute value to that because there's not that many local great bands or great artists that can come to your venue, or that can come to the event that you're putting together as a brand and really add value to the atmosphere of what you're putting together, you know. And so you value that, and you're willing to pay a premium for that because you want that to be part of what you're putting together. But in the United States, it's so big, and there's so much competition, and there's so many bands, and there's so many venues, and there's many brands, but not, I mean, there's a lot of them that have a lot of money, but the ones that have a lot of money are going to spend $50 million on getting Beyonce to be the face of Pepsi, you know? I mean, the level of what we're talking about is completely different, you know? So there's not that many brands that are going to put a local event on and want to spend $5,000 on a local band, because they'd rather spend $50,000 and get, you know, a huge band to be part of it, or 100 grand and be a huge band,
Yeah.
because they have that kind of cash and they're willing to do that, and the market is it's bigger, so they want to make a bigger impact. It's just a different kind of structure of how things work.
What I noticed was interesting that's happened here is that even the NFL was asking musical acts to pay to play the halftime. But I think that it would be a disservice to artists for them to agree that, because I feel like the way artists like approach venues, whether it's like an NFL halftime show or if it's a small venue, is they approach it from a place of desperation, and the venues can sense that, and
Absolutely.
they take advantage of it. So, but I've known artists that they have negotiated like venues to pay them to play there because they show how it benefits the venue as far as money goes, and they have enough knowledge on their business end that they can protect themselves, and negotiate that. But I was like, man, I was hoping they wouldn't do that with the NFL. I was like, because if you think about it, the halftime show brings in eyes because people want to watch the artist perform.
Absolutely.
So the artist owns the audience. The audience is what brings in ad revenue for the NFL Super Bowl. So the NFL is trying to do that to see. It's basically like a bully kicking you to see if you're going to punch him back,
Exactly. If it's to see if they can get away with it.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous, because it's like, I mean, and also because I also think that people in general have a very big misunderstanding of the work and the money that goes into putting together a show. I mean, there's a cost involved in putting together a show. And I used to pay free shows a lot until one day I was like, I'm not paying a free show anymore because I have a cost to put on a show, and that cost needs to be covered.
I think you're at that level, though, where you wouldn't have to do free shows necessarily because you have like a solid fan base,
Yeah, but still, people will try to get away with what they can get away with. Yeah. And my point being that things you end up with what you put up with, so
you have to set standards. You have to put your foot down.
So at some point you have to say, you know what, I'm not going to play free shows anymore. You want me to play, this is how much I cost. And people start to respect you for that, and they pay you for that. But until you say it, it's not going to happen. It's
kind of like the kid who has no self-confidence gets picked on, but the kid who has self-confidence doesn't, because he doesn't take shit. It's the same thing.
And people appreciate that. Like the times of my life when I have confrontational experience of somebody like really pushing me or stepping on my toes or being disrespectful. And I was, you know what, I'm not going to take this. People really appreciate it when you set limits. Because the people who usually cross boundaries with everyone, not just with you.
I think they want to see, they want to see strength represented in someone else.
They're not used to somebody saying, hey, no, that's not okay with me. So when somebody does that, they're like, oh, okay, well, I can work with you.
So what are your thoughts on major labels? Because I know that a label deal was not a specific focus of yours, and you now have created your own independent label.
It was my choice. I think it was heavily influenced by my education. I went to Berkeley, and I think the best class I ever took was called Legal Aspects of the Music Industry, and it covered basically, all the legal aspects of the music industry. But in particular, like a lot of stories, a lot of those horror stories that you hear. And our teacher was very adamant of incentivizing us to not give up our rights, our copyrights, our publishing rights, and to build something from the ground up and stay in control of our works for as long as possible until it felt like it was more to our benefit to give those up in exchange for something else. But that at the beginning of our career, we would have no leverage, and therefore we were going to be taken advantage of. And I think that I took to that way too much to heart, being the idealist that I am too. So I think that I made it a point to see how far I could get without having a label. And I also don't do well with authority, and I don't do well with other people telling me what to do or giving up control. So in my particular case, it also has to do with my personality. I don't know if it was a good decision, and I wouldn't advise somebody else to follow exactly on my footsteps, because I think that in a lot of cases a record label can help you a lot. And can do things for you that on an independent level is very, very difficult to do, because you need a lot of money in order to compete in that market. But it's my story and I don't regret it, and it's the choices that I've made. I never seeked out a major label.
Yeah.
But I'm not completely close to the idea of partnering with bigger companies than myself, if it's a partnership. So for example, we just released a record in Korea, and we partnered there with Warner Music Korea.
Okay.
And so we granted them exclusive license to publish and to release my music in Korea. And that's a major label, but we have a major label with a very particular relationship, a very particular contract that allows us a lot of control and a lot of freedom.
Yeah. Well, I think
in a market that we don't know anyway. So, I mean, what are we going to do? It's awesome to have somebody who knows the market,
Yeah. Well, I think that what you've done is definitely an ideal route for other musicians to at least try to model. They might not follow the exact same steps, but what I see is the idea is that you started off with a mentality where you were going to learn how your industry works.
Right.
You were going to learn how the business works. It's the thing that most musicians like you and I were both like resistant to at first. But you said, okay, I want to make a career of this. This is a reality. So I'm submitting myself to reality. I got to learn this. And you go through years of hard work where you're slogging through and building resources, because you've built like independent label and you have a team working with you. So it's like you're at the center of this team. Like along the way, you probably met this person who's like handling like the licensing and the publishing side, and then you're like meet this other person who's going to handle like your show booking, and you slowly build this kind of this like empire. I don't want to use the word empire, but this team, this
it's a machine.
You. Yeah,
it's a machine,
but it's people. I mean, so they're not cogs in a wheel because you've organically made a relationship.
Absolutely.
That's what I like. Instead of like plugging you into like a label system, it's like you have built it organically from the ground up. So I think this idea of like you start off with the idea of like, I need to retain as much ownership as possible, learn the business, build my team. Then you get to the point where if you wanted to partner with a larger entity than yourself, whether that's like a label or whatever, in Korea or in America or in Chile, you have like enough knowledge to where you can cut a deal that's fair.
Absolutely. And that's also something that I didn't set out to start a record label. I set out to build a career for myself, where I could, make the music and the art that I wanted to make without having somebody else tell me what was feasible or not.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the way, I started building a record label without even knowing that that's what I was doing, and realizing that that's what I was doing. And when people would ask me what I do, people would be like, "Oh, so you sing?" And it's like, that's like 1/20th of what I do, because most of my time is not spent singing or writing songs. Most of my time is spent doing business and building a business and building databases and connecting with people and going to events and doing all this stuff. So it became easier to say that I managed and owned and managed a small record label than to just explain step by step what I was doing. And that's really how this started, until it got to a point where it was very obvious that I couldn't handle all that were needed to be handled, because this was growing, thank God, and I needed more manpower. So I started to recruit other people, amongst them my husband and manager, who, we've been together for 10 years from the beginning, and had seen every step of what I was doing and was alongside me, helping and working with me, but in an unofficial way for all those years, until I finally convinced him that he needed to be on board, officially. So I think that in my case, like it's not something that I particularly set out to do, but it's reached a point now where it reached a point at some point where I said, you know what, let's see how far we can take it with me. And once we have seen what kind of success we're able to accomplish, then we can offer this to other artists, you know?
Yeah.
And we're just reaching that point right now where we're starting to sign other artists to the label for recording contracts or for licensing deals or for publishing deals, because we feel like we worked so hard to build this network of people and these relationships with people from all over the world that, like you said, artists we want to create. We don't want to do business.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, and for most artists, it's not what artists do best. Artists do art best.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have a record and then they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to help, you know, and to help push the music into the different places that it should go, and hopefully, you know, make deals that I've been on the both sides of the fence. You know, I've been an artist and I've been an entrepreneur in the music industry. I know what record contracts look like when somebody wants to take advantage of you, you know? And I know what record contracts look like when that label wants to make as much profit as possible. And I also understand the hiccups and the problems, you know, of monetizing intellectual property in today's industry. So when we meet with an artist, we want to try to create a deal that it's as fair as possible, having been in both sides of the fence, being able to put ourselves in this situation of the artist and try to offer something that is fair to them, but at the same time being in the position of the industry, also something that is sustainable for us, you know?
Yeah. You're thinking smart, you know?
We're trying.
Yeah. Well, at least, yeah. I mean, that's the trying part. Like, that's how you're gonna push yourself forward. And I noticed that you referred to yourself as an entrepreneur. Do you feel like musicians who will have the kind of success that you've had need to think of themselves as artists and entrepreneurs?
I do. I think that today, I don't know if you can have the luxury of just being an artist. I really don't. Even if you look at a greater grand scale, like some of the biggest artists today, you know, Lady Gaga, Beyonce, Katy Perry, Jay-Z, they're all entrepreneurs. Yeah. You know, Dr. Dre, I mean, like, he makes more money from like the headphones than he does from music.
Beats. Yeah.
You know, so and the same with so many. I mean, like, you know, Jennifer Lopez makes money from fragrances, and so does Beyonce. And like, it's just, you have to see yourself as a business and your name as a brand and your image as a brand, and you're building an image, you're building a brand, you know. Even if it's your own name, it's still sort of an alter ego. It's something that is greater than you. You have to figure out all the ways in which that brand can be monetized. And it's not just music is the smallest of it, and everything else that you do, you're doing it because you want to make a living so that you can support your very expensive hobby, which is to make music. But in the end, it's a business that has to have a lot of different angles, and music is one of them, but it's not the only one, you know? I mean, you're selling merch. You're retail. Yeah, and there's even artists out there that are selling experiences, which I think is really interesting. I think that's something we all need to pay attention to. But I just want to wrap up with just a few quick fire questions here, because I want to be respectful of your time. I know you have people coming in pretty soon. I have a baby. Yeah. So first off, on your main website, you have Warrior Heart available for everyone to download. Yes. That's yaelmeyer.com, correct? Yael Meyer Music.com. Sorry, yes. I didn't want to screw up your first name, but I did. And also Yael Music, if it makes it easier. Okay. At least the same place.
So everyone can go to that website, that punch in that URL. They'll see this awesome artwork of this kind of like headdress of flora, you know, flowers and such on your head. I thought it was really cool. See the video embedded, and then right below it says download Warrior Heart, punch in your email. What are your thoughts on having an email list of fans? Is that something that's important to you?
I think it is. It is really, really, really important for a lot of reasons. You know, fans want to know everything that's happening with you. Fans are the first ones to buy anything when you release it.
Mm-hmm.
Fans are the ones that come to your shows, you know, and fans are the ones that tell everybody else about you. So I think it's really important to have a direct relationship with fans, to break news first to them, to allow an open flow of, they can tell you how they're feeling, thinking, or how your work is impacting or being part of their lives. And at the same time, that's really what fuels us. You know, I mean, when somebody comes to you and tells you, you know, your music has affected me in this or that way, I mean, isn't that the whole reason why we do this? You know?
I'm curious though, what sets the email list apart from social media for you? Because couldn't you do the same on social media?
Not really, because are you really on Twitter or Facebook all day long? Or no.
It's on the phone, but I'm not on there
exactly.
constantly. Yeah.
And even if you were, I mean, Facebook has changed so much that now even if you have 50,000 fans, maybe 2,000 will see what you're posting, maybe 1,000.
Try to talk to them. Yeah, you can only get like 4%.
Not everybody that is a fan of yours will actually see what you're posting.
Yeah.
But when you have direct to fan, you know, marketing, which is what it's called, but you know, the mailing list, or you just have this direct connection with your fans.
Yeah.
You know, people choose if they want to read it, they're going to get it in their inbox. And, you know, and if they really care about you and they really care about your success or your failures or your challenges or your story, and they want to be a part of your career, they'll open that email and they'll stay connected with you. And it's just a much more personal way to approach, I think, fans than social media.
Because they have to give their email address instead of just the ease of clicking like a follow or a like button. I feel like that's just so arbitrary. On a certain level, like you don't know if that person really cares about your music, because like, oh, I just like to like because a lot of other people liked it, so I like it, you know. But putting in that email address, I think it takes a little bit more thought. They're like, do I really want to give them my, you know, email address and start getting their emails? So I have this last question. It's kind of something I have to admit I ask for myself. I'm curious, like, what does your morning routine look like that gets you pumped to create?
Well, the thing is, I have children, so my morning routine, it's different probably than most people's who don't have children.
Who don't have kids.
And I have a little baby who wakes me up like, you know, 7 times a night. So I kind of don't have a morning routine. My days kind of like fall into each other on a continuous flow. Like they don't end or begin. It's just, you know, being woken up every 2 hours. So, you know, my baby wakes up around 6 or 7 in the morning. I get him up and I try to have somebody take him so that I can actually sleep in a few more hours, because since I'm exhausted at 6 in the morning. So I try to sleep at least 3 hours in a row, which can never happen at night.
Yeah.
And then I usually have meetings around 11 or noon or something like that. Then around 1 or 2, I spend a little time with my son, and then he goes and does something else, and I do more work, you know, between like 2 and 4, where my daughter gets out of school, and then I spend my afternoon with my children. And when they go to sleep at night, I work from like 10 to 4 in the morning. So I really work at night. And during the day, I try to have meetings, because obviously you have to live in a schedule that other people live too.
Yeah.
So my face-to-face stuff, and sometimes if I have longer things like a photo shoot or a concert or a rehearsal or an interview, stuff like that, then of course I'm not going to be picking my daughter up from school or, you know, spending time with my son. Somebody else will do that. If I have to work the day full from 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening, and that happens as well, especially if we're doing photo shoots or video shoots, when it can be a week of shooting from 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening.
Yeah.
But when I'm, you know, working on production or running the label or things like that, I'm usually working from my phone, having meetings throughout the day, and most of the nitty-gritty stuff that gets done at night, when I can work 4, 5, 6 hours in a row without having interrupted.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, because you're proof that you can have like children and also have a full-time music career, you know, because a lot of people they're like, oh, I can't do it because I have kids, but you have it and you're doing it and you're working it out in your own way. So I mean,
it's not easy, and most people think I'm insane, you know. And if you send me a text message at 7 in the morning, do not expect a reply. You know, most people are getting up to get ready to go to work, and I'm going to bed at that time of the day because I've been up most of the night either working or, you know, or nursing my baby.
Yeah.
But so I don't really work or function in the natural, normal way that other people do, and it makes it a little difficult, especially because people don't understand at all what it is that I do in any way for a living.
And they won't.
They will never.
Because what you do is like so unique. I think what you're doing is extremely unique. Yeah.
Thank you. But, you know, I'm very grateful. Like you said, I get to have my kids, you know, when I go on tour, I bring them with me, which is another challenge in of its own, and it's exhausting as well. Yeah. But, you know, after I get off stage, I don't go home by myself to my hotel, you know. I go home to my family. And you know, it's I think that we, in a way or other, we all choose our challenges, and we all choose the life that we want to live. And in my case, I decided very early on in my career that no success meant anything to me, no commercial success meant anything to me. Family or people that I love to share it with. And I made it my personal goal that would be my number one priority. So I parallel to everything that I've been doing career-wise for the past 10 years, I've been building my life, you know. And I didn't postpone having children or getting married because I wanted to be a big touring artist, because I felt like even if I was touring 100 countries a year, and, you know, if I was touring 270 days of the year, I would have been very depressed and very unhappy if that's all I had. And if there's one thing that's all I had, I would rather it be my family, you know?
And because you maintained control throughout this whole process in your career, you were able to make that decision without someone telling you, that's a bad idea, we can't do that, we're going to have to put you on the road, you know?
Exactly. If I had a big major label deal where they had put, you know, millions of dollars into developing me as an artist, I wouldn't have a choice but to go on the road for 10 months in a row. And I would probably have a different level of success. And I know that. And I made that conscious decision that even though that's something that was very appealing to me and interesting to me, I also felt that at the end of the day, having, you know, 100,000 fans love me and adore me, and getting off stage every single night and go home to my hotel by myself for 9 months would not give me a lot of happiness, you know? And it's just a choice that I made.
Well, you truly knew deep down inside why you were playing music and what you wanted for your life. So I think that's awesome that you have that kind of self-awareness. But I want to be cognizant of your time right now. I know we've done a pretty lengthy interview, but it's been really awesome, covered a lot of awesome subjects here. So Yael, thank you so much for coming on and Seeds of Music Web Show. We'll make sure to have your links posted up below so people can grab that track.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that opportunity. You know, I appreciate, you know, being able to share my story with other people. Hopefully anything or something can be of help. And you know, I wish everybody a lot of success. And if there's one thing that I've learned from conferences and hearing other people speak, is that, you know, the people who make it are not the most talented, or they're just the ones that don't give up. That's pretty much it. Because
it's hard.
Exactly.
And it's going to weed out everyone who says they want it, but they really don't. Exactly. They really don't, because it's that freaking hard. Okay. All right, Yael, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much.
See you later.
See you soon.
And that wraps up this week's episode of Seeds of Music on the show. Today we had Yael Meyer sharing her wealth of knowledge as an independent artist and musician, creating, writing, performing, and recording music while raising 2 kids and helping run an independent record label that she herself founded. Simply incredible. So make sure to check out her links that I have posted up below. Head over to her website and grab your free song in exchange for an email. If you haven't yet, sign up for our email newsletter here at Seeds of Music. You'll get updates on new interviews, vlog episodes, and articles, plus special newsletter content to help you build a bigger fan base and sell more music online. And also, once again, we have the podcast. If you want to just listen to the show, head over to iTunes and download it there and leave a rating and review. If you have a Facebook account and a Twitter account, then please hit that share button, hit that like button, hit that tweet button. Share the information in this video with all of your musician friends so we can help each other out and spread this awesome content. And lastly, comment on the video. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on these interviews. Do you know someone who should be on the show, or is that person you? Send me an email to kyle.seedsofmusic@gmail.com. I answer every email that comes through to me at the most. It might take 2 days for me to get back to you, but I am totally systematic with my email. It's almost scary. So until next time, remember, we are the future of music.